I'm sorry. I'm Ksenia Gerstein. Before I introduce other people, I should introduce myself. I'm Ksenia Gerstein. I'm the curator of modern contemporary art here at the Ulrich Museum, and we're very excited tonight to welcome Dr. Brittany Lockard to be our speaker in conjunction with the faculty biennial that's in the room all around us. Dr. Lockard is an assistant professor of art history in the School of Art, Design, and Creative Industries here at WSU. She holds a doctorate from the University of Kansas, where she focused on contemporary art in her research and writing, and a master's degree from Indiana University. Prior to teaching art history at WSU, she also taught at the Kansas City Art Institute, University of Kansas, and University of Wyoming. In 2017, she was the recipient of the College of Fine Arts Mickey and Pete Armstrong Faculty Award for Excellence in Teaching, and I've only ever heard really good things about Brittany as a teacher from the students I've encountered so far in my time here. In addition to her teaching and research, Brittany has been a wonderful friend to the Ulrich Museum, and I'd like, since this is our party, I'd like to acknowledge that publicly. She co-curated exhibitions with her students at the Ulrich in 2016 and 2018. She has been a speaker in our new fun series this year, and she currently serves on the Ulrich Alliance, and we very much appreciate having you as a colleague and a supporter here on campus. Brittany's research interests include body diversity, identity politics, and food, and it is to those interests that tonight's talk relates. Her published work to date examines depictions of large bodies and how those representations resonate with cultural constructions of fatness. Her most recent publication is The Fat Body as Anatomical and Medical Oddity, Lucian Freud's Paintings of Sue Tilley, which appeared in Visualizing the Body in Art, Anatomy, and Medicine since 1800, Modeling, which was published in March of this year and is available on Amazon. And I will welcome Brittany to the podium in just 1 second, but before I do, I want to say that tonight's event is one where we'll be giving our Faces of the Ulrich collection buttons. Tonight's button is the Gregorita painting by Robert Henry, so you'll be able, we especially encourage students to get one, but everybody's welcome to one, and we'll be giving them away on your way out. So without further ado, Brittany.
I'm going to encourage you, if you can't hear me, to just give me a turn up the volume sign, because I'm quiet, shy, retiring. I would also like to start with thank yous, firstly to the Ulrich and everyone involved for inviting me to give this talk, but also to you guys for coming out on this rainy, humid, delightful evening to talk about food and some things you might not be expecting. So the theme of the faculty biennial is teachable moments, and I thought I would just start thinking about why research about food is particularly important on a college campus. So these are just some statistics from the National Eating Disorder Association, but they maintain, and I believe it, that over time eating disorders are increasing rampantly among women and also now among men on college campuses. If the number of students eating on a weight loss plan specifically, not for health, but specifically weight loss, has, what is that, math, quadrupled. Even athletes aren't immune, so there are 2% of college athletes that are women that have clinically diagnosed eating disorders and another 26% that exhibit serious symptoms. My least favorite statistic is that in a 2011 study, almost 70% of people who are seeking help for an eating disorder actually received weight loss advice instead of counseling for their eating disorder, and the larger your body size is, the more likely that you will be receive a claim for disordered eating, and the less likely that you will receive help for it. About 6% of people with clinically diagnosed eating disorders get talked about it when they visit student health centers, and college is the most likely place for eating disorders to develop. for men, women, people of color, many populations that we would think might be immune to this. So it's particularly important to me to think about the way that we conceive of, consume, talk about, make art about food. With that being said, instead of doing a formal lecture where I stand up here and read from a paper, I thought since we're doing teachable moments, I would teach this like a class, which means way fewer slides that are just full of words, which is like my least favorite thing to do. So more pictures, less words. And I'm just gonna say, if you've taken a class with me, you will know that I probably am not getting through everything that I intend to, so I'm sorry in advance. I have a real reputation for going slowly. So the first thing I do in all of my classes is talk about upcoming events, and it's really important to me to do this here this week. So on Thursday, you can come back to the Ulrich for Reading Now, Writing Now. I think I did that backwards, with Ben Nickel. More free food, and then a fiction reading at 6. This Friday is First Friday, our new final Friday, and one of our MFA students, Amy Hoosier, has a show at the Steckline Gallery at Newman, and those open early, so you can do that first, and then go get dinner, and then come back to Shift Space, where there will be a parade of wearable fashions and a number of other things happening. And then Saturday is the Empty Bowls Chili Cook-Off from 11 to 1 in what used to be the Experiential Engineering Building and now is the John Bardo Center. And our Sculpture Guild is doing an iron pour that's starting at noon. So you can go get your chili first and then come back and carve a block, and around 2:30ish the iron will be hot and ready to pour into your mold. Typically in the classes is where I'd ask if I missed anything, but I'm just gonna go on. So, I wanna start by thinking about food, because this is a thing that we tend to think of as natural, right? What could be more natural? Everyone has to eat. Ants do it, penguins do it, we all eat. But I would argue that it is not. We attach all kinds of meanings to food: cultural, ritual, emotional, psychological. And I'm going to give you a personal example here. Does anyone happen to recognize this Caucasian haute cuisine dish here? Yeah. Yes. Yes, Waldorf salad. So this is a fruit, celery, and nut salad that in my family is served only by my maternal grandmother and only at Thanksgiving or Christmas. So when I see, smell, taste this dish, I am in her house. It is roughly 85 degrees. I'm sitting in a really uncomfortable chair, and it's Thanksgiving. And Thanksgiving is not complete to me without this dish that I probably otherwise would not care about at all. So I thought I would turn it around and ask you, does anyone have another example of a ritual or cultural or personal association they have with the dish? Yes.
In my family, we have mackerel soup at Passover every year, and when we made it at home, it reminded me back when we would do it in our synagogue and have it at Passover. It would always just remind me of it, because you never really see it anywhere else. It's not too familiar around this area either.
Yes.
And so there's no selling.
Jewish delis then on the ground in Wichita.
Look, this is Christmas.
You don't need it. It's my sweet. He won't eat it.
Here and then Brian.
At Christmas time when I was growing up, my grandmother and my aunts and my mother, and all of her sisters, used to all get together to make nut bread and poppy seed cake and those kind of things. They would grind their own nuts. They had a grinder that they clipped onto the table, and so all those smells and everything filled the house at Christmas time. And I still have my grandmother's recipe for poppy seed cake that I make around the holidays.
Wonderful. Brian?
Like going to Mexico, everybody at the mother, like during Christmas time, that's all you ate for like 2 weeks.
Only tamales? Yeah.
My grandfather
I will say the same grandmother that likes the Waldorf salad is a huge fan of mixes for that very reason. Like, oh, I didn't have to hand churn this butter and put the dye in myself. This is store-bought margarine. Yeah, Robert. Yes, one more.
All right. So my family had this tradition in the holidays of making these little nut bread treats, baked bread treats that were called kippels. And I thought it was an old German recipe that was in my family for forever because they're all German. And when I went to make them a couple years ago myself, my mother told me that actually the recipe was procured by my grandmother from the neighbors across the street who were Hungarian.
Live and learn. This is why Ancestry DNA is so popular. This is maybe a harder concept, that eating isn't a natural act, it's culturally mediated. And one place that I think it's really obvious is how food is marketed to us. Advertisers have developed really specific languages, and sometimes it's a subtle code, and sometimes it is very much not, to tell you who should be eating this food, how they should be eating it, often why they should be eating it. And it can be really specific to not just gender, race, class, body size, age. So I'm going to turn it back around to you. Can you think of any examples of a food that's marketed to a specific demographic? Oh, I love it. Who's yogurt marketed to, Emily? Middle-aged ladies. Yeah, good. Yeah.
Dr. Pepper wasn't created because men didn't drink diet drinks, and they wanted to make it a diet drink that men would want to drink.
Yes, it worked. My brother loves Diet Dr. Pepper. Anything else? Have no fear, I brought some for you. So, Campbell's Chunky Soup, which was introduced in 1970, has had a remarkably consistent advertising campaign. So who is supposed to be eating chunky soup, and what do we know about them?
Real men.
Real men. Football players, for sure, or their moms. Why? Why do they eat chunky soup?
The very name suggests an adjective you would want to use as a woman to have associated with.
God, yeah, very few women would want to be chunky or have someone call them chunky.
It's a meal in a can. You can man the whole can, the whole dinner thing, just put it in the can. You got it in 5 seconds and the other.
Sold. And what kind of appetites are men supposed to have? Yes, big, manly appetites. You need food to grow all those muscles. Here is a more overt example of it, Hungry Man Dinners, which has man right in the name. And I picked a screenshot from an advertisement, the taglines of which are, "It's good to be full." So who are they marketing this to?
Hungry men.
Hungry men. Same social class or physique? Yes, they want you to think it's healthy.
Not manly men who don't wear glasses and wear bow ties.
Yes. Manly men, blue collar men, I think is what we're supposed to think, right? To hard day, you don't want to go home and make a quiche, right? You're going to have your Hungry Man. I will say, when I first saw the Hungry Man Select, I thought it said Hungry Man Salad, and I was like, oh, this is the best thing I've ever seen. But it's not. It is fried chicken and not a salad. So women are often used in advertising, not always for their own products. So alcohol is the place where you see a lot of ladies. Who is this marketed for, and how are they using women? Is it also marketed toward men, I heard?
Specifically heterosexual.
Yeah, yes, very specifically heterosexual men. What are the women doing there? Is this Janice from accounting? being alluring. Yeah, I mean, they're literally objectified and that they're turned into literal objects. In the case of the original Red, have a beer, fondle a lady, right? It's not always alcohol, though. There are some notorious parallels in fast food advertisements. So the Carl's Jr. ad says, "She'll tell you size doesn't matter. She's lying." And then that is Paris Hilton with a large burger. And Kate Upton below her. And then the Arby's ad says, "We're about to show you something, reveal something you'll really drool over." So I think we can all guess that it's not women they're trying to sell these delightful concoctions to.
Did you ever see there was a Coleman advertisement that appeared, didn't last very long, but it showed a very well-endowed young woman in a beach-like atmosphere, picnic, and there was a Coleman cooler in the picture, and the caption written above it was Coleman coolers and jugs, and there were no Coleman jugs in that picture.
I am 0% surprised to hear that. So marketing toward women tends to be a little different, and this is where Emily is very prescient. So these are all yogurt ads from the 80s to today. What do we know about ladies and their appetites and what they're looking for in food?
Less calories and sugar and a light resolution. Less everything to get you to feel like you need to lose weight or to feel like this is going to help you lose weight.
Yes, foods to shrink you. Give you that yogurt-shaped body you've always been dreaming of. I will say that Terry Garr is pretty nice because she never mentions that. She just talks about how the yogurt is creamier and it tastes better. So, Terry Garr, you made a fan out of me. And then there are some ads that it's a little hard to tell who they're marketed for. So the top row is a series of ads that Coca-Cola put out for their Fairlife milk. And I'm ashamed to say I love Fairlife milk. It never goes bad. So I still drink it despite this. But they say, drink what she's wearing. It's tiny from my viewpoint. Buttermilk looks good on you. More good looks good. Milk with flair. And then on the other side, we have one of the infamous Got Milk ads, this one featuring Taylor Swift. And the text says, "In this business, you've got to be decisive. So I choose milk. Some studies suggest that teens who choose milk instead of sugary drinks tend to be leaner, and the protein helps build muscle. So eat right, exercise, and drink 3 glasses of low-fat or fat-free milk a day." Music to my ears. And then underneath that, it says Body by Milk. So are these for men or women? I'll turn it around. Good. Yeah, specifically for teenage girls. Never too early to start worrying about how fat you are. Because I would also say preteens, especially in this sparkly, curly-haired face.
I mean, the blue ones seem to be for men, and it's like when you actually start thinking about it, it's super perverse because women breastfeed and women are sources of milk. So the idea of breasting milk is kind of revolting.
Yes.
The idea of a grown man being attracted to it is also revolting.
Yes. Yeah.
Also, milk looks like other bodily fluids, I'm just saying.
I almost brought College Humor did a series of parodies of this, including one that, let's say the milk is in her eye, and it says, "Get her used to sexism. Milk is for everybody." Yeah, it was very, very overt. I agree. I mean, I think also we're supposed to, it's a weird line there straddling in the Fairlife ads because also what looks good on her looks good on you. And, this milk is good for your body, so possess this body, whether you're the lady who wants to look like this or the man or woman who wants to, get your milk on with her. Women show up a lot in ads for healthy foods. There are tumblers devoted to women smiling with various foods. This is one of my favorite, is women smiling with salads. So what are they trying to sell me? You tell me. Yes. What could be better than a little Caesar salad? Yeah, they're hilarious. Yeah, I mean, it's fun, it's exciting, it's going to be the happiest you've ever been. You'll love this salad so much. You will ignore the fact that you might be instead having one of those juicy, thick Carl's Jr. burgers, right? I realize that is inadvertently sexual. I'm sorry, you guys. Ice cream, one of my favorite and weirdest genres of ads. So these are two recent Haagen-Dazs ad campaigns celebrating their natural ingredients. So on the left, attraction can't be faked, neither can our strawberries. And on the right, melt together. It's about how their ice cream melts really quickly because there's no preservatives or unnatural ingredients in it. Who are we marketing to here? What do we know about ice cream eaters?
I like that sex.
Yes.
But it's more of an elitist ice cream also.
Yeah.
Or design.
Oh yeah. I mean, Haagen-Dazs is expensive, and they're selling you like Tom Ford luxury car style.
So like Louis C.K. his show, he eat ice cream every time he was sad.
Yes.
So I kind of like that this ad is thinking like, oh, you know, like at least this ice cream will love you even if you don't have this other thing.
Yeah, so it is flying in the face of our stereotypes because it's always like sad person alone crying Bridget Jones big thing of ice cream, right? And they're contradicting that. It's sinful, it's sexy, right? These are my absolute favorite. So these are for Magnum Bars. And I'm gonna let you tackle these. How is this deployed? How are they using women? Are you okay, Alicia? It gets worse. This is like the most innocuous ad with the animal I could pick. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Yeah, so that is some coded racist language, right, where we talk about African American people being like chocolatey skin, dark coffee, no cream, right? That's racism.
And then like break the chocolate shell to get to the, the white cream in the center. Vomit.
Yep. All right, what's ice cream do to your very blonde white lady? Yes. It releases the beast, which is so obviously a sexual euphemism, right? I mean, we all know what the ice cream bar looks like, right? It's very phallic. It releases the uncivilized, natural hunger, the animalistic woman within. There are some women of color in these ads, which I find appalling, but no African American women, thank God. So, now.
I think there's a connection too because that, if you go back,
Yes.
that's also a brand of condom.
Yes, oh yes.
There's that whole other layer, and they're large size condoms.
Yes.
So the dare to go double.
Yes.
And I've always wondered, I don't know if there's any parallel between the advertising and piggybacking onto the condom brand.
Oh, I don't think that they have like publicly said, yeah, we named these Magnum because they're big
Right.
and they're dipped,
Like these.
right? But yeah, they're definitely playing on that,
Right.
and it's similar packaging even, right?
The blacks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it says for pleasure seekers.
Yeah. So I had originally intended tonight to talk about a section of this research with which I'm mostly done, which was eating disorder specific. But I couldn't. I'm sorry, you guys. I couldn't do it. I have too much talk about puke. I needed a break. And so we're going to venture into untested territory where I'm still in the information gathering phase and think about women, food, desire, and art. And it is very risque, intentionally so. I mean, they're really responding to ads like the Magnum ad. So we're going to start in Poland and go chronologically. So this is a Polish artist named Natalia LL. And she did a series from 1972 to 75 that includes film and photographs, both color and black and white, in which she hired these dainty, doll-like, blonde models to eat a variety of foods. Again, I would say suggestively, including sausages, bananas, ice cream, jelly, milk, so many of the things that we have discussed. And I thought I'd turn it around to you, and we'll just go in order. So what do you think she's trying to tell us about consumerism or women and food? Food is adjacent to desire. I'll take it.
Sex sells everything, including money.
It is so true. Oh, so Stephanie said sex sells everything, even bananas. Is this the same to you as the ice cream ads? Doing the same thing?
I think more explicit about it.
Yeah, she's filleting a banana, right? So it is very obvious it's a single entendre, if you will.
What kind of economic limitations related to food would there have been in the Eastern Bloc countries, and does this come down to even a status issue?
Yeah, so that is one of the ways that this gets read, which is there's kind of two opposing interpretations. One is that this is a critique of consumerism and mindless pleasure, and consuming everything from food to jeans to what have you. And you can think about the sort of booming advertising age in the West at this point. And then the other is, so she lives in the Polish People's Republic, which was a communist-controlled regime that was imposed by the Soviet Union after World War II, because they were conquered by Hitler, right? And they talked a lot about decadence and the West, as you might expect, and the government strictly controlled what was available. So a lot of the goods that you see people eating, like bananas, which are imported, or ice cream, Western-style ice cream, was actually not available. So some critics in Poland actually saw this less as a critique and more of like reinforcing a stereotype. So selling me banana instead of critiquing the way that you sell me banana, if that makes sense. I feel like a minion suddenly talking about bananas. What are your thoughts? Is this empowering for the model? Or is it just a different way to stereotype it? Yeah, Josh.
It seems like kind of critical, like it's meant to make the women look like bad, and like that's supposed to parallel with consumerism, and like how we use excess like carelessly, and she's like making a mess of her food, looking kind of dumb or whatever.
A little. Yeah. Yeah, she does seem mindless like a doll, which is what I think advertisers want us to be, right?
This would have been Twiggy time too. I mean, it looks a lot like the model for you guys who don't know Twiggy, but Twiggy would have been pretty powerful at this time.
Yeah, they all do. So yeah, you're right. I mean, this is even a switch in desirable body type to something that is much more like this.
Except Twiggy didn't have breasts.
Yeah.
Well, she did, not big ones.
Also very childlike, like the hairstyles are very deliberately childlike.
Yes, fashion. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's interesting that I think I can see the like economic part of it a lot more because she's teasing the camera in this picture more than she is in the other. Like most of the ads that we've seen with women in them, they're not eating.
Yeah.
Like nothing's in their mouth.
Right.
She's not like deep throating a banana in this picture. It's in front and it's probably like a whole foot away from her actual face based off of like the perspective of the camera. So I think it's kind of interesting that it's just showing that they like can have this thing, but it might even be saying that it's not really important for women to even have it, but for them to be flaunting that they do have it and you don't.
Ooh, very interesting.
It's different because if we looked at this picture, she does actually end up eating some, but most of the shots are of her not like it's just falling out of her mouth. A couple of the shots.
Yep.
These
Yeah.
pictures different models.
Yes, they're different models, Laura. Ksenia?
Well, I do think that in the context of Poland and maybe even Western Europe or the U.S. at the time, but so Poland historically is very Catholic and was communist at the time, which both cultures frowned upon representations of sexuality, particularly female sexuality, and so an image of a woman looking at least as if she's overtly enjoying herself could be subversive, so much so that these particular works we're going to talk about it were recently banned by the Polish government, or
Yeah.
they're trying to take them out of museums. So a whole bunch of women showed up in front of the museum eating bananas. So these images still have power in a very Catholic place with a very conservative regime.
Yeah, April of this year, they pulled these out of an exhibition for being too salacious. Yeah, Robert.
It's interesting because I was thinking about that myself regarding the subversive, the potentially subversive part of it, but then the title calling it consumer art. I don't know how that would translate into Polish or what the original title was, but as an English speaker with that title, I would think it's more of a critique of consumerism on some level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard to sort out where the art wants to go. Is it actually trying to critique the Western decadence of consumerism, goofy stupidity and food, playing with your food almost? Or is it subversive in the way to suggest that some sort of enjoyment and pleasure is available, on the down low, secretly, so to speak?
Yes.
So I'm not sure where to take it.
Why not both? Yeah. And I would also say, I mean, it's somewhat subversive still, like we're early in the days of women's art and feminist art to think about this as made by a woman. So it's a woman looking at a woman during the sexual act. So there's no, this is male gaze 101. She's flipping that on its head too. So I think there's a way you could read this also as homoerotic and empowering in a way. I mean, the model's looking at us. She has some agency over what she does with the food. To the best of my understanding, Natalia LL did not direct them exactly what they had to do, and she's performing for a woman behind the camera. Still with me? Oh, Ksenia.
The other thing, in terms of where this is situated, historically, this is very early in the days of performance art becoming a major medium. So there's an argument here about, the temporally limited act of just consuming food being art, and I think she's being cheeky about it, but there's also
And she gets associated with both pop art and conceptualism. A classic pop art example would be Andy Warhol's Marilyn Diptych. He also did food, but I thought this was relevant because Marilyn is a product to him. I mean, she's packaged. That's not her real name. That's not her real hair color. That's not her real smile. She's a redhead named Norma Jean, right? And then we see her as a product on the, I don't know, tabloid images and commercials. But it's sharing this also visceral language of like the grid and the repeated object and time with conceptual art. And I picked Joseph Kosuth's clock because it's literally about time, right? So how much should be responding to this as well as sort of advertisements or consumerism? Yes, sorry. I'm also notorious for asking like a full paragraph question. So, do you think that this artist is responding to these currents in contemporary art as well as consumerism and advertisements? Jenny, is that a hand or a scratch? Okay.
I mean, probably, right? I mean, these are very different images. The way they're laid out, I think it's hard to argue that they're not comparable to the Warhol piece. So, it's not staged. So that she just, well, I guess it is in some senses, but it's very believable that it's taking a piece of it, but then adding something on it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's certainly less staged than the image in the Maryland diptych, which was a, what do you call it, headshot for publicity.
It makes more sense to think of it as influenced by pop art, and that sort of explains the sort of double edge between critique and celebration, and not really clearly being either. And even so, in that light, the film strips from the earlier image, I would think that maybe she would have seen the Warhol films that were just, nothing happening really at all, except people just sort of fooling around and doing whatever.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's a woman who doesn't have any clothes on, above her shoulders. She doesn't have any clothes on, and it's presented as some consumer art title.
Yeah, that's a great observation because I'm coming back to you. She was part of a larger performance group that was called like Permanent because it was about doing performance from everyday life. And before this, she filmed like Sleeping and Eating, just like a Warhol film. Yeah, Alicia.
I think it's just interesting with thinking about women as commodities. From the Maryland piece, being before this one, it's kind of George just putting it in your face a little bit more. Like, okay, I'll show you a woman as a commodity. And then,
Yeah, it's much more overt. Okay, I couldn't resist this from the same year, which is by the feminist art historian Linda Nochlin, responding to images in which women are associated with fruit by associating male genitalia with a banana. So she, at the same time, is still thinking through this phallic object. In a really overt way, Marilyn Mentor is interested in food and sexual connotations. So she makes a series called 100 Food Porn, which, as you would expect, is 100 paintings of food. And I thought, again, I would turn this around to you. How do these deal with advertising, gender, painting, sex? All of that's in there. Yes. And they elicit a visceral, yes, the crack, the squish. Yeah, dripping out of the food and on the canvas. Dripping, Craig said. I should repeat.
the egg typically is like a symbol of purity, virginity, fertility, those sort of things. So, cracking it open. And then, of course, tomatoes, if you see ads where they have
that idea. We're coming up on it again.
Would the tomato not 40 sign for like a rival? What a tomato. She's a hell of a tomato or something.
I am going to be completely honest. I've never heard that, but that's fascinating. Oh, hot tomato. That I have heard. Yeah.
The yellow color is very specific hue.
It's specific what?
It's a very specific hue.
Yeah.
It's not actually the colors we associate with the food.
Isn't that, if there's a level that's like crawfish, you like crack it open and suck it out.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I'm gonna let that lay.
I mean, for forever and ever, they've had those T-shirts that say "suck the head" in New Orleans about crawfish, right? Hannah, did you have it? Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't know if there's a connection, and I don't know what the other painting color schemes are like, but I know the color red is supposed to evoke hunger or appetite. Maybe she's playing with that, and maybe she's playing with an appetite, but what type of appetite? Because it kind of somewhat sexualized with how juicy and everything is.
Yeah, I think so. And what about the way she narrows in, right? It's not like a full length or a bust length figure. There's no head, there's no face. It's just fingers.
Although the middle ones are very clearly gender.
Yes, nails, the red nails. Yeah.
So I think this really looks like current advertising for especially fast food, like Sonic commercials where throw the fruit at you, you've got this starlight background, dripping through, or the McDonald's commercials with burgers that look way too delicious for what they actually are.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, Ksenia.
As somebody who looks at images of food from like vegetarian or vegan perspective, it's so striking to me that they completely evacuate any information about the process of production. And I think this evokes sexual desire, but I think it also evokes violence, and the fact that violence goes into making food, violence towards animals. Even this tomato looks like
Yeah, it's
it's like being eviscerated and gutted.
cracking, stabbing, squeezing. Yeah.
So I think it's like supposed to both evoke like sex and death and violence all in one go.
I love it. I think she's also, oh, go. No, sorry. Ted, were you going to say something?
Regarding the materiality, you asked about the length of the painting, and I
Mhm.
think that's where I see the most layers.
Mhm.
I think the imagery is pretty overt, labial imagery and penetration.
Yes.
The material, the Bend-Aid dots talk about the mediated nature of these images.
Yes.
At the same
Gold
time,
star.
sort of the critique of action painting is ejaculatory is there.
Yeah.
So we see things that hit the painting, but we know that it can't be painting because the Bend-Aid dots demonstrate that it's printed matter.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think she's poking fun at these, I want to call them aggressively masculine painters, like de Kooning or Pollock, and even somebody like Lichtenstein that makes very gendered work. Yeah, Robert.
Yeah, it's a critique to add on to Ted's point, a critique of both all those styles, because the sloppy abs drips all over it, as well as the Bend-Aid dots, and that's kind of like a weird combination of the image.
Yeah.
But that's part of the critique. Pop art too, as well as FX.
Yes, her immediate predecessors. It's about to get real uncomfortable, so take a deep breath and come with me. Okay. At the same time that she was making food porn, she was making porn grids, which are similarly close-up, disassociated imagery taken from pornography. And she has continued to sort of blur these lines between consumerism and consumption and sex in her more recent works. I will add, slightly complicated because she also works for fashion designers. So she's done ad campaigns for Tom Ford and a couple other people whose names escape me right now. But in the broader context, is there anything different about the way she treats food, or is this part of a whole spectrum of sex desire consumption? One more time. Okay.
All of them are very, like, they're just real focused in on whatever the subject is, so you don't get much context at all. You're just focused in on this feeling, this desire, whatever it is that the painting's supposed to evoke. It focuses in on that rather than anything else at all, so it blocks out everything else.
Yeah. Yeah, she really narrows in on the object of desire, as it were. Yeah, Josh.
There's like more, like because of the face, there's like more human contact, but the eyes are still left out, so they still don't seem very human.
Yeah, they're very objectified.
I would say like the food pieces look a little bit slightly more suggestive to me, whereas the other ones are very overt.
Yeah, I picked this porn grid because it reminds me of an ice cream ad, like out of context and next to the food ads, like that language really crosses over for me. Feel free to disagree strongly if you. Oh, yes, Hannah.
It feels like they're selling some sort of fantasy, but specifically for men.
Yeah.
Like with multiple women and with women like, I think there's kind of a symbol of like beads on a woman's face.
And I mean, speaking of slang, like string of pearls is a specific sex thing, right?
Yeah, so it's very specific to the target.
You guys can Google it later if you don't know what that is.
Are all the ones in the food porn series as violent as the three that we saw here? Like, do they all have that? Like, those are remarkably violent compared
There's-
to these others.
Yeah, there tends to be, I don't want to say all of them, but there tends to be like they're pulling leaves off an artichoke, or they're cutting into an orange, or they're even popping lids. So there's some kind of opening or breaking procedure in all of them.
Just to piggyback off that, I think it's hard because we don't have all the images, but the paintings, she maybe gives the action still to like gendered masculine hands. Versus I feel like these two shots, like they're not, like the action is like put onto them, but the people in the paintings don't own the action. Like the white splotches and the sweat, but it doesn't look like either of them are moving.
Interesting. I guess I always assume the hands are women, so that's
Oh, like
my thing.
the crawfish and like the man got to break the crawfish and then it looks like masculine hands using the knife, but the female hands, I don't know, I just thought, and it's probably just because we don't have all the pictures, but I thought that was interesting.
And because she makes such a point of doing those like fake acrylic red nails. Shall we finish up with something that is perhaps more lighthearted? Okay. So I want to briefly go to the UK and talk about Sarah Lucas, who just had a really big retrospective, also titled Au Natural. And I heard you laughing, so I'm just going to turn right around. What's her thought on food, sex, gender? Say what?
I think, like there's a sense of like humor in the pieces, but maybe talking a little bit of like, the reduction of human like genitalia to items, like.
Spot on. So I'm sorry, it's a little bit long, and I promised you less of this, but she says, I was quite a tomboy when I was growing up. I liked hanging out with a lot of boys, and I sort of got used to their way of talking about sex, and at the same time as thinking it was funny. I suppose I was a bit aware that it also applied to me, and I've always had those two attitudes. I did enjoy it, but at the same time I must have shuddered inwardly, I think, which I believe Alicia expressed for us very well. I also think she's thinking about lots of things. So she's a photographer, and I think she's thinking about the history of still life and plants, because this is that, right? Just in a domestic setting. This is the first one that came to mind for me. I don't know if you guys know Archimboldo's paintings, but he literally turns fruits and vegetables into people. So how is her work different from Archimboldo's?
I think it's a lot more commentary in her work. Like, to me, it's both of those were very, like, woman as receptacle. And we don't see that in this one on the right. You know, like, there's definitely a fierce statement that goes with those two.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen.
Woman as receptacle is a great phrase. And the mattress doesn't look great, right? And the vegetables are a sign now for genitalia and not like literally composing someone's personality as a god, which is what you do. So here's your coming back to Alicia's fruit and breast. Like, this is a pretty common joke. And a lot of people sort of disregard or characterize Lucas's work as just being a dirty joke. Is that what you see?
Does she use real produce or wax fruit? Real?
Real.
Conservative thing.
Yep. It sure is.
And then was it intentionally time-based? So then,
I can see it reading a little bit that way without the bucket. But with the bucket, you know, it's hard for me to take it as joking.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
funny, sad.
Yeah, sad French.
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, the difference with the image is that, you know, say what you will about Mike Myers and his Austin Powers and all that. There's something from that movie and that image in particular is a little bit more whimsy, but also a sort of certain kind of sexy charm. There's not really sexy charm in Lucas's work. It seems like a commentary also on. There's something sort of dirty in the literal sense. That's kind of a little bit sad and pathetic. It gives it an undercurrent of seriousness that isn't that takes it from being like, okay, these stereotypes are maybe humorous, but they're also kind of sad, and maybe this is just kind of pathetic, but I think it's fun.
Yeah, I love that you said dirty, because this doesn't look like fun sex in a nice house or hotel, right? Yeah.
And it's humorous, and it's like funny in this instance where you're in like a certain social or economic class. You're not, you're in a dirty mattress.
Yeah, less so.
well, and exactly what happened with her. Like, she grows up with these dudes, and it's funny, ha, and then she grows up and like recognizes the actual context of things.
Yeah.
Our initial instinct was to laugh.
Mhm.
Orange is a piece of cocoa, right? I'm like, oh, it's a bucket. You know? The same process that she went through.
Last one, because I promised I'd end it in 50 minutes. So I just thought I would bring us back around to someone in the faculty biennial show. Our very own Kelsey Gossett plays with some of these same ideas in her work, like TikTok, in which a woman, and I would say more identifiable in terms of gender than the person in Sarah Lucas's Chicken Knickers, is smashing eggs in her underwear, which is also, I would say, funny and dirty, but serious and thought-provoking. So thanks for coming to my talk.